Hello and welcome to the Radio Underground. I'm your host, Entellus, and we have with us tonight.
Hello, my name is Mendebel. I am your glorious, illustrious, faceless co-host for the evening.
Yes, and for many evenings to come, hopefully.
Yeah,
Yeah, so how you been?
I've been up and down recently, but things are on an upward long-term trend. So who's complaining?
That's good. That's good.
How are
Yeah, I
you?
mean, I'm good. I had a pretty good day at work and had some good interactions with people. Really trying to embrace the job I have and do my best and stand out around the others around me. So that's all we can
Yeah,
really do.
yeah. I'm trying the same. I'm not quite where I want to be at the moment, but it's what I got, so I got to do it right.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked about what this podcast is and everything. And I guess it's kind of, what do you do when the walls are closing in on you, when things seem to be happening at warp speed and the people who are leading us are all walking in lockstep towards a direction that doesn't seem to benefit you and you don't know if it's going to benefit you. You're not sure if you want to go that route. Um, I mean, that's pretty much the purpose of we talk about what's going on and then move forward from there.
Hmm. Yeah. So what a time to be alive, because I mean, there are a lot of people out there, millions of us, at least in this nation alone, that think that the walls are closing in, politically speaking, uh, geopolitically speaking, sociopolitically speaking. The walls are closing in, and what do we do about it? Where do we go? So I think that, for those who don't know, which is uh, everyone, Entellus and I grew up together. We spent a good part of our middle lives together, and we've been friends ever since. And we always had these grand notions of, what are we going to do if the world comes to an end? It's strange because that's kind of what we used to talk about to relax, and we always dreamed up these big scenarios and like, oh, an atomic bomb drops and we'd survive. Somehow we'd survive, and this is what we do, and that's what we do. And I don't know, it was just something that we did to relax. And now things are getting a little more serious, and so and I'm sure that we're not the only ones like that. And so what's been piquing my interest lately is how much we've continued to talk about those things, especially in this day and age, and how uh, practical it has become to continue exploring these ideas. And so, me. That being said, me, and I've come to realize that I sort of have this escapist mentality, which is probably not always good. Maybe it's good sometimes, maybe it's not good, but I sort of have this escapist mentality stemming from my childhood, where it's like things are bad here. Let's go somewhere else. Let's start anew somewhere else and just let this let this plant die, and let's go grow a new one somewhere else. But I don't. I have not come to the conclusion yet, personally, that that's the best course of action here.
Hmm.
And I've listened to the last two podcast episodes that you made on your own, and you make some excellent points about what we can do to resist the changes that are coming, and what we can do to separate ourselves from that slow lumbering machine. And uh, I think that for those who want to leave, is it time? Is it not the time to do that? I don't know, but there are options for those who want to leave. A situation that they may deem to be dangerous, or maybe the walls are closing in and you're afraid of not being able to get out. For those who want to stay, I think that there are plenty of options to help
Hmm.
fight the machine. So, you know, you mentioned in the last couple episodes, you've been starting your own little homestead. You've got chickens now. You've got how many chickens do you have?
10.
10 chickens. Man, that's once they reach egg laying age, that's enough to feed a family
Yeah,
for
I figure
sure.
we'll have some for us and for the people who live nearby. Share it
Yeah,
out,
right.
you know.
And you're
Um,
making beer mustard, which is a commodity.
yep.
You know, despite anything else, it's a commodity, and that's really important. Is commodities and trade goods, and you know
Yes.
that's speaking of that. That is a way to help fight the machine. Is being used creating a use for yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, so my wife and I always talk about how do we build positions of strength? How do you have a position of strength? Because when you're in a position of strength and someone comes and tells you, hey, you need to do this, or hey, you have to do that, you have the ability to put your hand up and say, no, I'm not going to do this. And if they say, yes, you are, it's like, well, no, I'm not because of this, this, this. I have these resources, I have these people, I have this. I do not have to do that, nor do I have to give in to whatever you're holding against me. Um, so, you mentioned the desire to escape and the escapism. I think that's a very just human instinct, going all the way back to our ancestors, hunter gatherers, versus you could even call it new age in a human evolutionary timescale, agricultural. So you got your hunter gatherer instinct is, well, I have all this land that I can move in. If there's a threat here, I can move here. And that's kind of almost like an entrepreneurial instinct as well, the taking advantage of the resources that you encounter in your travels and you encounter as you move around. While the agricultural um, standpoint is, I have this land, X plot. This is mine. I put a fence around it. I plant here, 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 here. I cannot move from this spot because I've invested time, money, and energy into this. And if you try to take it, I have to stand my ground and say no, because I'll lose everything. So it's
Mhm.
humans have this almost dual system in them of being the farmer and being the hunter gatherer. You know, it's all I often wonder if the story of Cain and Abel is just the conflict between early hunter-gatherers and the early farmers over resources and land. It's just innate in us. And so the point of wanting to leave and wanting to stay, it's never going to go away. You have to learn to find a way to take advantage of both options and be ready to take advantage of both options, because the day may come when you can no longer stand on a plot and say, this is mine. So you need to be ready to take that step and be the hunter gatherer. And there's also days where that's just non feasible. So, I mean, you mentioned some of the stuff going on. I mean, we got every day it seems like there's a new variant. We got the Delta, the Lambda, the Gamma variant, all this stuff. But
Mhm.
I mean, there's some good stuff happening. I saw the Boston mayor is in opposition to vaccine passports. She compared them to basically like slave papers and stuff, and it's it's funny because they're really eating their own with all this stuff because they're just constantly pitting people against each other, and eventually it'll come to a head, and it just won't be able to stand because so many people will just be unable to do anything because they're in so much conflict with their own reason, because none of this stuff makes any sense when you really
Mhm.
think about it. Um, so yeah, the little homestead here is doing good though. The chickens are doing good. It's really fun, good for the kids, and they're fun to watch. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned I'm the farmer, I'm planting a stake, and this is my ground. Okay. And
Hmm.
that's that's a really pure point from a human perspective because uh, you also mentioned that if someone comes to you and says you're going to do this, you have a network, you have enough weight to throw around to say no, we're not going to do that. We are going to stand here and resist. Okay. But
Hmm.
when can you not? When can you no longer resist? It's when you have nothing, and it's when you have no status, when you own nothing, when you have no network, you have no support, you have no structure underneath you to actually help you to stand against an oncoming force.
Hmm.
And maybe that whole fight or flight response is maybe it can be distilled down to while you still have status, while you still have while you still retain ownership of anything, really, uh, while you still have a voice, while you are still a person for all intents and purposes, you are able to resist something.
Hmm.
But as soon as your status is removed, as soon as you have nothing, then uh, you need to reassess your surroundings. And the idea of a homestead, I know it's sort of cliche, oh, resist, start a homestead, but there is something to that. And you and I have talked a lot. Um, seems like this is most of our conversation. I think is we've talked about starting a homestead, so you're independent of the system. You're more independent of the system because with all the strange shortages going on and all the odd timing of things, you know, we're short on wood, we're short on food, we're short on meat, we're short on whatever else, you name it. Like it's just a round robin month to month. But you have your own chickens, you're supplying yourself with eggs, occasionally meat, you have a pretty sizable garden going on. That's great because if there's a food shortage, you're not going to be as panicked. And the more that you can rely on yourselves and your network, the less reliant on a collapsing system or even a tyrannical system, the less reliant on that you're going to be. You're going to retain your status, you're going to retain your ownership. You own your land, you own your food, you own your materials, your family is intact. And really, it doesn't, at that point, it doesn't matter your partisan side, it doesn't matter your race, your creed, your sexuality, your choices in life, your beliefs, religion, it doesn't matter. If you have status and ownership of something, if you have ownership of something, you are going to be much more able to withstand a a tyrannical system.
Yes. So one of the thing you pointed about, building groups and such, you look at what's going on over the last year and a half, and regardless of what it was, why it happened, you know, how deadly it was, whatever. Take all of that and just throw it away and just look at the end result. What happened? Um, a whole lot of separation, anxiety, and broken groups who
Mhm.
fought over something that they couldn't see, basically whether it was real or not. Where have we heard that before?
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but um, so eh, you know um, so this entire thing has just driven a wedge and just destroyed so many people. um, it's really important, really unfortunate. So it's really important now more than ever for us, for the listeners, for anyone to work on building a group, work on, you know, I feel like I say this every single time, but I'll say it again, build local community, support your local businesses, because those are the people who are around you and who, if times get hard, you can rely on. You know,
Mhm.
the Bible says a better a friend close than a brother far away. Um, so, I mean, that's huge, and you can never be fully independent as a person. We're a tribal entity. We're meant to, specialize and work on specific projects that we're good at, and then share that with other people in order to maximize basically the economy, the local economy. So, in the spirit of building groups, you know, I'm big into the idea of red pilling, but then you introduced me, I guess, a couple days ago to the concept of purple pilling. So can you explain better purple pilling?
Yeah, and really that was just a spur of the moment.
Yeah, kind of a joke, but it's funny.
Yeah, kind of a
It's
joke
good. It's good stuff.
because we all know that the purple pill is it has certain effects, but
Makes
the
everyone
red
happy.
pill, yeah, sure, unless it lasts over 4 hours, then
Yeah,
you
yeah.
get sort of antsy. But you have the red pill on one side, you have the blue pill on the other side, and there's other movements like the black pill, which is something completely unrelated, and there's several other different pills out there. But the idea of the purple pill was, I'll digress here for a second and then swing back around. Have you ever been onto now? For those listening, we lean a little bit. We're pretty middling on the political spectrum. I will say for myself that I lean a little bit more on the right, but then again, who doesn't these days? Because things have been so skewed to an extreme degree. But I do lean slightly more to the right, but I am pretty center on everything. I pull bits from both sides, and I'm pretty solid in that. But I tend to pay attention more to right wing media, or whatever people want to call alt right, right wing, far right, extremist media. No, I don't like CNN, and I don't like sort of the left media outlets, and that's really where it stops. So, but have you ever watched um, sort of the quote unquote right wing media, what they say about what's going on, and oh, this person's was this Fauci was embarrassed by this question. Okay, and then have you ever watched the left side media that says, oh, you know, Stephen Scalise was embarrassed by this shocking question or whatever? It's all the same.
Yeah.
And if you look at the comments, all you have to do is remove the names. You remove the names, and the comments are the same.
Hmm.
You know, uh, oh, uh, X is trying to silence opposition. Well, who am I talking about? If you just remove the name, you get those comments from both sides, and it does not make any sense because you're on your side and this person's on their side, and you're both saying the same things about each other. They're trying to silence opposition, and they're siphoning money, and they're doing this, they're doing that, and eventually it just comes down to it just comes down to he said, she said,
Hmm.
which is useless. It's a useless place to be. It's like you're in between two shorelines, and you're just caught in a maelstrom that you created because you're spinning around. It's like eventually something's got to give, and the whole system just becomes pointless if it's just he said, she said, um, circus politics, and all that stuff. It's back and forth, right? It makes no sense. So I think that we're possibly being pitted against each other on purpose. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to come of any of these things. This person's not going to jail for that. That person's not getting indicted for this. This person doesn't have to pay that. This president is is getting impeached. This president's getting impeached, but neither of them actually get impeached. Neither of them get removed from office, I should say. It's like nothing is going to come out of any of this. It's just a big circus.
Mm.
Okay. So the idea is, why even pay attention? Why? I mean, you should pay attention to things, but why participate? Why give those systems power? Why contribute your views and your time and your comments and your votes to an extreme degree, I guess? Why contribute to those systems? And the idea of the purple pill is, who cares if you're on the left? Who cares if you're on the right? Who cares if you're red or blue? Don't not even coming together. It's not really a mixing of the two. It's just uh, sort of a tongue-in-cheek way of saying, don't choose either. Just
Mm.
be a person, be a human being, and stop trying to get one up on someone else. Oh, we're gonna get them. I hope they go to jail. It's like, yeah, they're not going to. As much as either of us wants them to, as much as anyone wants them to, or people, whether they deserve it or not. Andrew Cuomo is getting Andrew Cuomo, yeah,
Yeah.
Andrew Cuomo is getting. I get them mixed up. He's getting pushed under for sexual harassment now, but in 2018, he himself said that Donald Trump was getting pushed under for sexual harassment, and like, oh, that's a regime, that's a presidency that does not respect women, and sexual harassment, da da da. But here he is experiencing the same thing. So it's like, well, you know, it just doesn't matter. And um, everyone's saying, well, that person should go to jail, and well, that person should go to jail too. We both know neither of them are going to jail. No one's going to jail. And if they do, fine, whatever. But judging from previous events, recent and far past, no one's going to jail. No one's getting indicted. No one's being pulled into anything. They'll be questioned for a couple of weeks, and then it'll just die out. And then the next big thing will come up. So why even contribute? Why be a part of that? Be a regular human being. Hope that justice is served, but don't don't get your life ruined over it. Like, don't spend countless hours following the circus when the circus is just there to entertain you. The circus is just there to take your time.
Mm.
What you should do is, what we should do as a community, as a nation, is figure out ways to fix our system. Okay? Don't focus on don't focus on the growing pains of the system. Focus on fixing the system, and focus on real solutions. Focus on not partisan solutions, not, well, I want your side to suffer because of what you did, so I'm not voting for your idea, even though it could fix things. As it should not be anything even close to that. For instance, like, the voting scam that was being talked about is like, oh, well, it wasn't a fair election. Here's a good example. It wasn't a fair election. The Democrats stole the election. Okay. We know that they cheated. We know that they rigged votes. We know that they voted for dead people. China gave them votes, or whatever the argument was. Okay. Sure. Fine and dandy, whatever. If you rewind back to Trump's election, what did we hear? It was the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of whining about, well, this person cheated, they should go to jail. No, that person cheated, they should go to jail. And trying to overcome that mountain, trying to climb over that boulder, while at the same time being pushed from the other side by the opposite team. Why don't we figure out ways to fix the election? You know, there's a big push right now for open source voting machines, open source programs, open source technology, open source hardware. And I'm not a genius at computer technology, but um, and it's not to say that open source technology will be the fix. Okay, it's not to say that it will be the fix, but it will be a step in the right direction to being able to verify results. Okay, because people can look at the Dominion voting machines, for instance. Anyone who is skilled with code, anyone who is skilled with code, um, can look at the source code for these machines and say, yeah, that's not right. There's a backdoor in here that this group, any group, can get in here and modify the votes. Okay. And so then other people can say, yeah, that's not right. We got to fix that. It's verifiable that there's an issue. Um, so let's tell the world, right? And the world, even if you're not skilled with technology yourself, you can go into the code and verify that this part that they're saying is in there is actually in there. So that's sort of the beauty of open source technology, is that anyone can look at it. And even if you don't know exactly what it is, the beauty is that you can look at it, that you have access to it. And uh, people that are skilled with coding and technology, they can be uh, contributing to the fixes. Now, the other side of this is like blockchain technology,
Yeah, I was
which
thinking
again
about that.
is, yeah, that in itself is also not a sledgehammer. That is not going to be the thing that fixes everything. But when you piece together a lot of these different parts, open source technology, so everyone can verify what's going on, blockchain technology, so if you vote, it becomes part, if I as an individual vote, my vote with my individual pin number, my individual identifier, is put onto the blockchain for everyone to see.
Hmm.
Your vote, whatever you choose, is put onto the blockchain for everyone to see. And Susan two doors down, her vote is on the blockchain for everyone to see. And if anyone's cheating, you will see a bunch of these votes that don't make sense, and it will be verifiable. Wouldn't it be great to know?
It would.
Wouldn't it be great to not just say, no, you cheated. No, you cheated. Well, how did I cheat? Because you just did. Well, how did I cheat? Well, because I know. Nobody knows. It's not, I mean, sure, somebody could know, but we're not going to know. We're not going to know. So might as well focus on moving forward, fixing the broken system that we have, and coming together in solutions that don't vilify you or me.
Hmm. Yes. So, your point on blockchain made me think about, we both are into Tezos. So Tezos is almost like a republic form of governance in which individual holders of Tezos post their Tezos to a delegator or a someone who is participating in the consensus mechanism for Tezos. They basically give that person votes, and then the consensus maker, they're called bakers with it, um, pool those votes and use it for voting on protocol upgrades and such. So systems like that exist all over blockchain, where you have a distributed voting mechanism, whether it's a decentralized those DAOs or DAOs, decentralized systems for voting and governance of different programs. So, like you said, it's not the tool, but it has a piece of the puzzle for solving it. So one of the things that I've thought this for years was coming for the globe, and I mean, a lot of movies have portrayed similar systems, is kind of like a neo-feudal corporate system, and we're already kind of molding towards that. I mean, just the rollout of the um, medical procedures nowadays where you're not allowed to speak out against them. That's some major corporate power when you really think about it, that is enabling or demanding that an entire government suppress all negative communication on it. And they're doing
Mhm.
a pretty good job. It's difficult to find anything where anyone can get true informed consent on what is going on right now. So I don't expect that to stop, unfortunately. I would love for, um, a lot of people seem to be waiting for like this savior to come and solve all these problems, but that's not going to happen. The Q thing that happened over the last couple years, I firmly believe was some type of psychological operation in order to keep people in a certain place in their minds and potentially even lead them to their own destruction. And
Mhm.
we saw something like that happen earlier this year, unfortunately. So, I don't see any reason to put, faith in some person rising up and solving these issues. Um, so one of the things I've been interested in with, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, precious metals, alternative forms of currency is, how do you, as we move forward into this kind of corporate world, which is like a steamroller. Now, we know we got to get out of the way of the steamroller. We need to step aside, get the high ground, whatever. Um, a lot of people don't realize that the steamroller is right behind them, unfortunately. Um, so since we know, and since we're aware of it, and we know what we need as people, um, one of the things that interests me the most about cryptocurrencies is that it's a form of money that is, it's not really outside the system because it relies on the internet, um, but it's completely um, value driven organically by the individuals within the market. It's like a true, and it's less that now that they've allowed futures and large organizations in, but it's like a true free market. So one of the things I see is we're going to have a separation of classes coming, just like in kind of the medieval dark age times after the collapse of Rome, where individuals were owned or forced into labor by their feudal lords. These are going to be corporate entities in our age, and maybe a few individuals who are very wealthy. Elon Musk, maybe one, some Chinese people who are very wealthy. I'm not sure, but um,
Mhm.
there's also going to be a class, and this was a class during the feudal times of uh, the free men and free women who were still able to maintain control of a little bit of land, the rights to um, the value of their labor, and still had private ownership. Everyone who existed under a feudal lord, they didn't own the land that they were on. They were basically serfs. They provided produce and stuff and other supplies to the feudal lord in exchange for quote unquote protection, which meant when there was a war, they got to grab their whatever weapons they had and go fight the other people. So not much protection, but
Yeah.
but yeah. So obviously we want to be a part of that the class of freed people, not under a corporate feudal state. You see what the International Monetary Fund putting out with, you will own nothing. We expect people to be living in pods and things like that. And yeah, sure,
Yeah.
some people may uh, have fun with that, but I'm not really looking to do that. And neither, I don't believe you are either. So,
No, not really.
we talked about, you mentioned earlier about, you know, when you have no status, when you have no strength, when you have no power, you have the inability, you cannot say no. It's you look at our country with the student loan situation. Student loans are the only type of loans in our nation that are unbankruptable. You have to ask yourself why. Why is that? Why is it? That doesn't make any sense. I guess maybe because it's not attached to a physical good, it's attached to your intellectual property. So they basically have a lien on your mind, and it's pretty messed up. So I'm really surprised that this hasn't been used more. It's only really been used as like a political pawn, like, oh, you vote for me, I'll forgive your student loans. And I get it. Oh, just kidding. So,
Yeah.
but I'm really surprised it hasn't been used for more. I mean, I could imagine, in the future, like, oh, hey, you want all your student loans forgiven? Well, join the army. We have a war going on, so it gives them a lot of strength over top of people. So, that's one thing that we can do to avoid becoming a part of the feudal class is try to avoid all unnecessary debt. I got real into Dave Ramsey for a while. He's all about getting rid of personal debt and things that non-productive debt. Robert Kiyosaki as well. He was all about using debt to create assets that produce income. As a rental property or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, Definitely individuals I suggest checking out. But yeah. So, what are your thoughts on avoiding the feudal state and maintaining status as freed men?
So I think you're absolutely right about avoiding debt. Um, and the student loans thing is a killer. Unfortunately, homes and student loans are just the biggest hangman's playground in the US right now. Because I actually do have a theory about what student loans are being used for. The high student loans, and it's just ballooned. I mean, student loans have always been, or tuition rather, has always been kind of high,
Hmm.
but it's ridiculous right now, absolutely ridiculous, and I think I know why. So think about it this way: we're fighting sort of a color revolution at this time,
Hmm.
and that was a tactic of the Marxists. Now, for people listening, it's really easy to play things off as like, oh, these are obviously alt right, far right extremists who are conspiracy theorists and stuff like that. No, you need to go read the Communist Manifesto, but because everything that you're saying now, everything is not new. None of these tactics are new. They are all done before, and it's all it failed a lot in the past, but they just keep trying again, right? So in the Marxist teachings, you'll learn that public school system is part of it. The public school system was implemented in order to one get the government closer to the child, but also to separate the child from the family over time. And it was also meant to prepare the child for the workplace, really, which Marxist or not, that's what public school's for, right? It gets you in the 9 to 5 schedule or the daytime work schedule. It teaches you skills. It socializes you, to be able to talk to other people. It's the intent is those things. But the Marxist view of the public school system was to indoctrinate your kid with those things and be able to take your kid away from the family at some point and teach you that the government is your family. The other kids at school are your family. The teachers are your family. Your family at home is simply the people that birthed you and the people that feed you occasionally. And you got to do what they say, you know, until the government is ready to take you fully under their wing. And the college system is actually an extension of that. Nowadays, in the beginning, the college system was just, hey, I've got a skill um, that maybe you want to learn, so you come pay me money and I'll teach you the skill, right? Well, university came around because they started realizing, like, oh, we can band a bunch of these people together with skills and make sort of an all-inclusive, you come learn here, like everyone comes and learns here from this selection of teachers, right,
Hmm.
on this campus. So um, picture a system where the university is no longer a place for you to learn a diverse set of skills, or I should say more so a diverse set of specialized skills, to where you don't just pay money and you'll learn how to be a computer programmer or an artist or accounting or trades or whatever. It's no longer that. It is a place where you are encouraged to go so that you can, quote unquote, get an education. You pay an exorbitant amount of money during your stay at this university, at this college. You are told, you are taught about the evils of capitalism and the evils of the imperialist capitalist West, and how it's all about money and it's all about profit. And well, as soon as you get out of here, you got to go get a job. Otherwise, the capitalist pigs are going to throw you in jail and stuff like that, right? And they're being told, uh, these students are being told all about how money is evil and how people did this to them and everything. And then these students go, yeah, man, that's messed up. That is so messed up. I can't. And now I got all these student loans that I got to pay back, and I'm never going to be able to pay them back. And your communist Marxist professors go, well, that's too bad. I wish there was another way, like communism. And the students go, what? Huh? Oh, nothing. Just talking about, how communism would, if communism was the thing, you wouldn't have to do all this because everything would be free. And the students go, I want to hear more about that. Tell me more about that.
Mm.
And there you start the indoctrination process, right? There it
Yeah.
starts. But if you look at what actually happened, it was not the capitalist system that forced this upon kids. Like it was not. That's just the way society is set up. But nobody said that kid had to go to school. Nobody said that kid had to pay that money to go to that university and get in all these student debts and everything. Yeah, that's unfortunately the way society is working out right now because everyone's looking for a degree, right? But it was actually a Marxist tactic to get you to come to that school, get you to pressure you to come to that school because you can't get a job without education, right? Which is not true. Um, at least you don't have to go to university. You can go to a certification program or something like that and get a job. But you got to come to this university if you want to be considered for anything. You got to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars if you want to get a good education. Now look how bad capitalism is. It's actually the tactic to get you to do all those things and then tell you that capitalism did it so that you will be swayed towards the side of Marxism.
Mm.
It's like a bait and switch,
Yeah.
classic bait and switch. And then you get all these college kids who really don't know anything. If you're in college, you really don't know anything. You truly don't know anything. That's why you're in college, right? You can't tell me I know some stuff. Well, you're in college, so that tells me that you don't. um, you know, college kids don't really know that much, especially about the world. They don't have world experience. They just got out of high school and they're being told one side of a story and they're not being told the other side, which is, well, these tactics have been tried before and you don't have to go to expensive university to get a job, at least not, most jobs. There's some things you need to specialize in, but you don't need to come to this university and pay lots of money and be trapped by debt and all that stuff. It's there are other options. They're not being told the other side of that story. They're being told one side, which is capitalism made you do this. The West made you do this. So um, that being said, I do think that the college thing, the university thing, student debts, I do think that that's being used for evil. I don't think it's, I think you made a good point about, well, if you come serve in the military, your debts are repaid, or, we'll take down this much per year that you serve in the military or something like that. I think that's, I think that's a reasonable thing to expect from a system like that. But that's not the system we see. The system we see is this recruitment tactic. And it's really sad. It's a sad state to be in. And it's also a sad state that a lot of college kids don't see it that way. So now you get these, fast forwarding out of college, you get these Marxist indoctrinated kids that grow up, they get out of their college years, go, well, all the capitalist swine, now I'm stuck in this system and I'm going to go get a job and I'm going to complain to everyone else about the horrors of capitalism. And I'm going to teach my kids how bad capitalism is. And, I want to go be a teacher actually. And I'm going to go teach those kids the horror of capitalism. But what's actually happened is you're teaching kids that have gotten to the same situation that you did.
Mm.
So you're you're a bunch of pigs in a pen about to be slaughtered, and you're saying you shouldn't have come here. And they're going, great, I'm already here, so
Mm.
what's the
Yeah.
problem? But to that point, what was the question before I went off on that rant? Because I'll
Oh,
do that. I'm
it
just
was
going to warn you, I will do that.
how to maintain being freed men in the
Yes,
age of neo-feudalism.
on maintaining freedom in the age of neo-feudalism. It's not to play the game. I like to distill it down. It's not to play the game as much as you possibly can. You will have to play the game. For now, you have to have a social security card. You know, um, you have to have a smartphone. You have to have. You will be in debt. At some point in your life, because houses, you unless you make $100,000 a year, which a lot of people do, but we don't. Um, I certainly don't. You will have to be in debt over a house, right? You
Mm.
may have to be in debt with a car. You do not necessarily have to be in debt with school loans,
Or a
um,
TV
or a TV,
or anything like
or
that. Yeah.
like all these niceties. Live within your means. Live within your means is a really great way to stay out of debt, and it's a really great way to stay out of the system. Because so I talk with my wife about this a lot when it comes to buying things, and we try to stay out of debt as much as possible, and we really don't have any besides the usual house and car. But the point is with that, if you own something, if you truly own something, if your car is paid off, let's say you have one car, let's go to an extreme. Let's say that you own everything. You're not paying off anything. You own a house, you own the car in total, you own everything else. You are not paying anything, which means that the transfer phase is done. You own it completely 100%. No one can come to you. A bank can't come to you and say, well, we're taking this. Why? Well, because you know, the economy. Well, what do you mean the economy? Well, we're taking it. Have a good day. No one can come to you and take it. Otherwise, it's theft, right? Otherwise, it's theft.
But there's
And
one entity that can take it.
yeah, well,
Got that
that's
property tax.
yeah,
But anyways,
that's something
continue.
else.
Yeah, that's a
That's
whole
something
nother
else.
story. In the land
That's
of
a
the
whole
free,
nother story.
got your
Yeah,
property
land of the
tax.
free, right? Got to pay property tax.
Yeah,
There are some things you always have to pay, right? Like bills, utilities, things like that.
yeah,
Property tax, unfortunately, is a side effect of living in a country with a government.
yep,
And that's unfortunately that's just the bill we pay for having streetlights and things like that. Um, of course, there are people that will disagree with that, and again, that's a conversation for another time. But
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
there you have eliminated almost every way that someone can come and take something from you. They can't come take your car for whatever reason. They can't come take your house. They can't come take. They can't shut this off because you have a lien against this and that, and you can't pay it. So we got to figure something else out. Ownership ownership is the way to leave the system. One way to leave the system. Okay. And the other side is ownership of, as we mentioned before, ownership of your supply line as much as you possibly can. Have a garden, fix things. I am always railing about fixing things yourself, learning to fix things, learning to build things yourself, owning that system of maintenance, because the more you understand about things, the less you're dependent on other people. I, I'm sure it'll come out on this podcast a couple times, but I have fixed so many things in my house, so many things in my domain over the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years that and I was not trained in any of this stuff. I'm not incredibly smart. I just looked it up on the internet. That's the short of it. And you didn't grow up on a farm. You didn't grow up with uh, large amounts of animals. You didn't grow up knowing things about different currencies and the economy. I mean, you're an economy major, but you learned these things over time,
hmm,
and you've done a ton of research on homesteading and small farm operations and gardens. Like, you know more about gardening than anyone that I know. And you didn't grow up with those things. Like, you learned them. Okay. I fixed a TV that I found in the trash at my old work. It and it's not a TV. It's a bigger conversation, but it was probably $2,000 new, and I paid $70 for a part. Pulled it out of the trash, paid $70 for a replacement part, and now I own this thing. Um, and and like I don't know how to fix TVs. I looked it up, and so just that
and now you
idea
know.
of now I know, right
Yeah,
now. And actually, my wife's dad was talking to me about his TV and how it's probably having a similar problem. And I said, yeah, bring it over. I know how to fix these now, right? So now theoretically, I could go into business, right?
yep,
But the idea is like I own the knowledge of how not I own it, but I possess the knowledge of how to fix things. And the more you know, like the more you know how to fix this, the more you know how to fix that, the more you know how to fix this thing over here. That information and that knowledge kind of trickles into like, oh, my Johnson rod is broken in my car. Um, and I don't really know anything about cars or Johnson rods, but I think I have an idea of how components work and different things go together, and I know how to order the part. And I have the confidence that I can fix this thing. Don't have to pay somebody else to do it. I can, but I don't have to pay somebody else to do it. I'm not dependent on like, oh, this very easy to replace cheap part in this TV burnt out, so I'll just throw it out. It's like, no, you can fix that thing and hold on to it and not have to buy another TV, not have to spend the money. So that's yet another way to escape the system, because you increase your independence, your level of independence,
mm,
and you increase your general knowledge about the world around you. I'm all about those things. And when it comes to, like, when you learn, the more you learn about technology, for example, the more you learn about technology, the more you learn that it's actually fairly simple in concept. Um, yeah, I'm not saying it is simple. I'm saying the concept of it is really simple. Um, but the what it's actually being used for right now is pretty terrible. And your phones, for instance, like your phone. This is no longer a conspiracy theory, by the way. People were saying for the longest time, like, I think my phone's listening. Well, that's actually been happening since like the 50s. They've
Yeah.
been wiretapping phones on Americans since the dawn of time, since people were communicating with sticks over telephone. They've been tapping into sticks and stuff like that, listening to the cavemen. That's been going on since the development of the telephone, and it is happening now with our telephones. Your phone does listen, it does watch you. That is verified, and it's provable. So, but people go, well, I like this phone because it's convenient and easy. That's great, but at what cost? You know, at what cost? Are you going to sell your soul to the devil so you can learn to play guitar? Sure. I mean, that's up to you, right? But don't complain when your phone watches you and your phone listens. But a way to escape that is to get a phone that doesn't. Well, there's no phone as good as. No, there's not, but there's viable options. And if you just increase your knowledge on some of these fringe options, it actually tends to function more or less the same. Maybe you'll have to give up some things, but what's the trade off? You're not a product, because when something is free, the old phrase goes, when something is free, you're the product. Okay? When something is free, when there's a free app that, oh, it gives you cash back for scanning your receipts, or, oh, it gives you cash back for driving safely. Okay, well, what do you pay? Oh, nothing, it's free. No, it's not free. There is a catch. Okay. But the new phrase is actually, if something is free, you're the product. If you are paying for something, you're still the product. Okay. So you're paying for an iPhone, right? I mean, I have an iPhone. I don't love it. I actually was going to switch from iPhone um, when my old iPhone died. But long story short, I ended up being gifted another iPhone um, for in exchange for fixing it. And so I thought, well, this is like a nice one. I'll use it until I decide to make the change to something else, and then I'll sell this one and have a little bit of pocket money, right? But um, there's other options out there. I was going to switch off of iPhone. I am a Linux fan, so I was going to switch to some Linux-based phones and open source-based hardware, open source software. But even so, if you're not into Linux, Linux is kind of tough if you don't know anything about computers, anything about operating systems. It's not insurmountable, and there are a lot of easy options for it. But the idea is, if you don't want to go that far into the deep end, there are some shallower options. You can get off that system. You can break free of that machine. Same with computers, same with operating systems. Windows, it's watching you all the time. It is the same system. It is watching you all the time. And it is actually manipulating your behavior based on what they've decided is the best thing for you, based on the data they've received, the data that they've harvested from regular users, right? So you're being manipulated by their algorithm that was pieced together by your behavior. And it's just it's kind of a what's the word? Kind of like this big Leviathan system that's coming together, but you can break out of it. You can get out of it. There are options. You can break free of it. And I think that I can summarize all that by saying, decrease your dependence on other people, decrease your dependence on big companies. Okay. Unfortunately, you will have to make some sacrifices there in this day and age, but that's because we've pushed out small business. By supporting big companies, we pushed out small business. We cut off our own leg, and now we got to stand on the other one, right? So support smaller business, try to break free of big business, be less dependent on big business. Big tech is not there to help you. 9 times out of 10, big tech is not your friend. Okay. At least not right now. So break free of big tech, break free of social media. It is not helping you. It is not. I have been off of Facebook for years now. I never really used it that much, but I've been off it for years now, and I feel great. I feel amazing. It feels nice to not be monitored by people around you by the things that you post,
Yeah.
right? And and the last thing I guess is don't trust don't trust that people have to tell you the truth. No one has to tell you the truth. No one has to tell you the truth. No one is is indebted to tell you the truth. You are not entitled to the truth. So these big companies that are like, we're here to help, asterisk. What is the asterisk? What does that mean? Ask, what does that mean? And they say, like, we stand for diversity, equality, equity, happiness, truth. Say, what do you mean by all that? Do you mean like true equality, true diversity, like everyone's treated the same? Or do you mean, we stand for this current doctrine that's being pushed in order to destabilize the nation, split people apart and stuff like that? We're for equality as long as you agree with us. Are you for that or are you for this? Ask those questions and don't trust people by their word. Trust people by their actions. All those things, in my opinion, add up to destabilizing this monolithic machine that we're building
Hmm.
and increasing your independence as an individual, as a person with thoughts and feelings and preferences and things like that, nuance, and decreasing your dependence on these monolithic corporations, these monolithic entities that eventually will be telling you what to think, what to do, and well, they won't be telling you why to do it, but they'll be telling you what to do, and that's really it.
Yeah. So I really have liked the idea of, withdrawing your consent, from these things. So, you have a Facebook, you consent to all their policies, the policy to track everything you do, everything you post, the websites you go to. What do you buy? Who you talking to in your messages? Or, you know the whole drill. And if you don't know, anyone should look into it. So the whole concept of withdrawing your consent from these organizations. Um, the other thing I thought was we went back to, I want to go back to the education part because I think that's a huge piece of maintaining individual sovereignty through this whole thing is increasing your education. So um, there's a couple different models for determining the value of like capital. So you got like a Malthusian model, which is basically the old school where you have X amount of people, X amount of food. When there's a surplus of food, the population goes up, and then it passes the amount of food you can have, and then you have a population drop, and it's like this cycle. And it's a very negative way of looking at the world. And a lot of the people who, are interested in the global warming movement and such, they have a Malthusian worldview. You talk to them, and it's always, we need to reduce the human population and such. And oh, would that be that bad if we did that? And, why is that a bad thing? But, they're assuming that they're not going to be the one who is removed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, as intelligent humans who believe in humanity and, you know, progress, you know, you, it the green movement, it's always like this all or nothing thing where it's like, okay, either you accept these terms, like we need to reduce the population, we need to reduce this in order to get to this zero carbon thing, whatever. And then you got the other side who's like, oh, well, that's BS and I don't want to deal with that. In reality, ecosystem collapse is something we need to deal with, but we can do it in a way that's intelligent and progressive, real progressive, as in, you know, forging ahead with new technologies and finding ways to do things better. And yeah, we can probably have way more people living in a world where we have a system set up like that. So that's Malthusian. Then you got, straight capital model where, I have a field and I can work it. But if I have an extra employee help me, my productivity goes up. But once you have a certain number of people, you reach a point where the productivity drops for each individual added because you'll have people jumping all over each other and stuff. Um, Now, education, though, is the one thing that the more you learn, it exponentially increases the value of your human capital, quote unquote. So, knowing this and knowing how certain individuals value people in the world, having a high human capital sets you into a good place. Having low human capital, which means a lower education, sets you into a bad place. And as we were saying, this can be self-driven. These are skills that you can learn on your own. Having that skill enables you, say you do lose a job or something, you can temporarily sustain yourself by fixing TVs or fixing other things that you've learned. And then once you have the skill, no one can take it away. The only way it's taken away is if you die or you have like neurodegenerative disease, which I
Hmm.
guess may happen when you're older, but like when we're all old, But um, while someone can take your tractor, someone can take your land, they cannot take the knowledge that's inside your mind. So that's a huge piece. Another piece of, avoiding the feudal system. I read a really interesting blog. I don't remember where it is, but the guy had this idea of distributed nations. And he specifically, in his mind, was connecting them via cryptocurrencies. But basically, he said that, you know, with the internet and with a monetary system that can be lightning transferred to any point on Earth um, within seconds, you don't need banks. There aren't really any borders. And you could have a group of people distributed across the country who agree to a common contract. So when the United States was formed, you had a geographically located group of people form a social contract in which they made certain demands against their government at the time, which was England. We want these demands. We don't believe we've been being treated fairly, and this is what we're gonna do. And they ended up fighting a war over it, right? So one of the issues with isolation, as we talked about earlier, is you cannot build that position of strength. But through the internet and through distributed currencies, you could build an online social contract system and you could get millions across the world to agree to a specific social contract, a specific form of taxation, a specific form of infrastructure investment, and certain goals, and basically build a nation of people working towards a common goal. The internet would be the thing that's fusing all these people together. I think that may be something that we see more rising up in opposition to things such as the Great Reset and other monolithic forms of control that are being kind of shoved down our throats against our will. And it is, not only shoved down our throats, but we're basically being told this is what is happening. But
Hmm.
it is not what's happening. It's what we're being told is happening. And you have millions of people, walking to the steamroller with their eyes down and their heads down. They've given up. But there's some of us, we're looking up and we're looking around and we're like, hey, hey, no, 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 we're not doing this. So as we continue to grow and we continue to build connections and establish resources, I think that's a really interesting way because, if you have millions of people all agreeing to a certain thing and then they can say no altogether, and
Mhm.
how are you going to deal with that as a government? I mean, I saw in Australia, the military is helping enforce the COVID lockdowns there. But even with the military helping and the police, it's like 10 for every like couple thousand people. And
Yeah.
I'm not advocating at all that people react violently or anything, but in that situation, if everyone just withdrew their consent and said, no, we're not doing this anymore, realistically, what are they going to do? They can't, um, it just can't be done. The Soviet Union fell um, because of a basically snowball event that started with a guy getting confused at the Berlin Wall and letting people through. He got confused and he thought that someone said that people were allowed through, so then people started going through, and then that set off this cascading event that led pretty much the Soviet bloc to fall apart because everyone in other countries were like, "Oh, they're allowed to go through. All right, well, we are too. Let's all go." And everyone just withdrew their consent and just went. And then the police, there were so many, they're like, "Oh, well, what do we do? What can we do? And why are we doing it?" And that's the big thing with right now. I think a lot of, our law enforcement have forgotten. They're not asking, why are we doing this? It's just, this is what we do. Because if you sat back and if more people sat back, why are we doing this? And really looked at what's going on and the facts of what's going on, a lot of people wouldn't be doing it. I went on
Mhm.
vacation and I was told that we needed a negative COVID test and we had to wear a mask around my grandma and around the kids, even though my kids are the same age as their kids, and yada 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 yada. Even though all of them have the vaccine, and so we went, and when we got there, no one cared. We didn't wear a mask, but I felt like my aunt just felt that she needed to say those things because that's what was the socially acceptable thing to say. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that's what we have kind of going on right now. We have people who have been bullied and gaslit into complying and enforcing the rules for themselves, even when it is at detriment to their own health and their own future.
Mhm.
So all the things we've talked about, I hope, help bring people forward out of this stage to build community and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Just remember that, as I said, nobody has to tell you the truth. And just because there are signs everywhere, I mean, every gas station now, a lot of restaurants. I mean, we went to a restaurant the other day, or a store the other day, that said mask required, like face covering required. And I just thought, there's no mandate, like there's no government mandate. They can't, if they kick us out, they're doing it as a private company, not because of a government thing. So, who cares? And so I just walked in. No one in there was wearing a mask, and we didn't have ours on, and some people behind the counter didn't have theirs on, and no one was telling anyone to get out. And so, that being said, you know, the narrative, the narrative is that everything's dangerous and we have to wear a mask and we have to do this and we have to do that or else. But when you actually go and do that, like nothing happens.
Hmm.
And so you have to pay attention to that. And why is that happening? These businesses are really just they're kind of just following the crowd. They don't want to stick out. They don't want to be canceled. They don't want to be, get a bad review on Yelp that says, "Oh, I feel unsafe in that store." So they just do it, right? The same with like my local gas stations and everything. They all have that. Local stores, they all have the signs up, but you walk in and no one cares and no one's wearing it. So that tells you right there that it's the narrative that is pushing one thing, but reality is completely different. And if you are one of those people that's scared of everything and you just want to be in the crowd. You don't want to stick out, you don't want to be an individual. It's just, whatever the crowd says, okay, that's fine, whatever they know better, that's fine. Then you're going to be one of those people that walks up to a store that says, "Oh, mask required." You're going to put your mask on. You're going to walk in, see that no one else has theirs on, and you're going to get upset with that. And you're going to complain and you're going to fuss at people and say, "Why don't you have yours on?" Well, I'm protecting you and you're protecting me and all the buzz phrases that go around associated with that stuff, right? But if you look at what's happening, if you actually distill that, you'll notice that that person is acting alone. They're completely acting alone. Okay? Completely. There's no mandate. There's no, the rules aren't being enforced. It's those people that are now causing the problem. So that just goes to show you again that whole like judge people by their actions, not by their words. And don't pay attention to the narrative. And like I guess I should say, if you hear something, don't go by that. Look around, look around. And then with the military thing, you have to be worried. You have to be worried about the military. And I hate to say this because I was military and I know lots of good military members. And my sister is military. My cousin's military, like lots of family. I come from a military family, I guess. But if the economy collapses, I mean, truly collapses, where a loaf of bread is $2 million, back to the Weimar Republic, back to Zimbabwe, the economy truly collapses to that degree. Guess who is going to be getting paid every month or every 2 weeks? The military. Without fail, the military will be taken care of. Okay? And there's a reason for that. Because if the government, if a tyrannical government decides to enact a policy which Americans find disagreeable, guess who's going to enforce it? The military. They're going to use the military as their enforcement wing. And what happens if the military decides not to enforce it? Their family is going to starve because they stop being paid this really nice paycheck. They stop getting taken care of. Okay. And it doesn't even mean their families. I mean, what if they don't have a family? What if they're just kind of like what if they're the opposite end? What if they're a selfish individual, no family, no morals? Well, they don't want to lose their nice, lavish lifestyle in comparison to the peasants. So yeah, they're going to do their job. They're going to make sure that the rules get enforced, that policies get enforced. But even good people will turn into the enforcer under dire circumstances. I mean, you're dead. What would you do?
What would I?
Mm-hmm.
You seriously asking me?
Yeah. What would you do
Depends. I mean,
if it
to
was
get to
your
that
family
point.
starving? If it was between your family starving because you're not getting paid, or your family, you get paid and your family gets to eat, your kids get to eat, your wife gets to eat, but you also have to go enforce this policy on this family. You just got to show up. You got to wave your gun. It doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. But you got to show up and wave your gun. If they say no, you arrest them and put them in this black van. We'll take it from there. If they say yes, you go back home for the day. That's your job.
Hmm.
What would you do?
That's an interesting question because to be in that point, because obviously I don't have a job like that right now, and I wouldn't sign up for a job like that. I'm not interested in working in that type of field. Um, so to be in that type of job, I'd have to be in a different place in my life.
Hmm.
Reading I read the Gulag Archipelago.
Yes.
Reading that book, great book. Oh my gosh, completely blew my mind, and it was one of the reasons I decided I wanted to start this podcast. And I mean, we talked about this whole idea, you know, you can't really hide
Hmm.
from from danger. You can't really hide from what you fear. You must stand up and face it because if you don't stand up and face it, the fear will come for you anyways, and you'll just
Yes.
be on the ground hiding instead of standing up. So, you know, I'd like to say I wouldn't be in a situation where I would be the enforcer for that type of thing. Now, if I happen to be in that situation and my kids were starving, I probably would be the enforcer. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a human being. Like a guy. I'm a man. I am a father, and I'm not gonna say that I'm incapable of doing that because that would be, I mean, it wouldn't be true. Now, saying that I'm capable of it and I could do that doesn't mean that I would, and
Hmm.
doesn't mean I
Yeah.
would find a different way, obviously. So,
Exactly.
in that situation, though, if that's really happening, the thing's so fucked up that at any time the rest of it could collapse. So, because that's not sustainable, but it can go on a longer time than someone can live. So
Yes.
I was talking to my buddy about some of the stuff going on, and we were talking about the supply chains and going back to, lumber shortage, chip shortage, food shortage, all this shortage, right? Um, he was like, well, the market has a really good way of repairing itself and fixing itself. He's correct, 100%. If we get all the manufacturing cut off from China, eventually the United States will get there. But it's like, are you going to live that long? How long is that going to take? It could take 100 years. So you can't just rely on others and the quote unquote market to fix the problem for you. But yeah, back to your original point, I agree with you that the quote unquote military would be very dangerous during a economic collapse. And here's a very disturbing thing that I have observed and noticed in my own circles. So as more and more mandates get brought down the line, I see more and more people of good conscience leaving the police and the military, the fire department, EMS, and things because they don't want to compromise certain beliefs that they have. And so, what we're being left with within these organizations are people joining who just want a paycheck
Yep.
and
Or people joining that want to be the enforcer.
want to be the enforcer. And I've met plenty of those in my day. Um, and the people who want to be the enforcer are the ones you don't want to be the enforcer unless you're a
Yes.
tyrant, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's a pretty, you know, the best advice there I'd say is just try to avoid running into those situations and be prepared, to have, like we said in the beginning, positions of strength so that, if all hold barred and there's major shortages and major issues, you're not an easy target
Yeah.
because like groups of people, predators and such in all of nature. go for the weakest target, the one that's straggling behind, the one that's alone, the one that's weak, the one that appears weak, the outsider of the group. And within, the prepping communities, there's a lot of people who have the fantasy of the lone wolf idea and, I'm going to do it all on my own. I don't need anybody. And it's straight fantasy. It's completely wrong. It's completely against human nature and their own nature. Um, so you don't want to be that guy, but you also don't want to be like the do you know who the Cathars are?
No.
Okay, so the Cathars were an organization. It was a religious group. I don't remember the exact time, but it was pre-Renaissance, post Christian expansion throughout Europe. And what they were in Western Spain and Eastern, or Western France, Eastern Spain. And so these groups had kind of like their own fringe form of Christianity, and they were completely self-sustaining. They had their own walled cities, and they pretty much only interacted with each other. But they were peaceful. They didn't really cause problems, but they were kind of just their own thing. So
Mhm.
the Pope, I believe, which Pope? I'll have to look up another time what Pope it was, but one of the popes basically declared a crusade against them because they were not giving in to his authority.
Mhm.
And have you ever heard the phrase "kill them all and let God sort them out"?
Yes, I have.
Okay, that is where this phrase comes from, is the crusade against the Cathars because they were Christians. And what happened is the general who was ordered to attack them interceded and went to the Pope and said, "Are you sure we should do this? Because they're Christians like we are." And the Pope responded, "Kill them all and let God sort them out." And that's commonly used today. People say it against our enemies in the United States. But yeah, so that's where the term comes from. So not being the Cathars means like, you know, you want to be in a position of strength and you want to be self-sufficient, but you don't want to be like this closed off group up in the mountains, completely away, that your government looks at with suspicion. That's how you end up with like Waco, Texas, and Ruby Ridge and things like that. Um, because they're just like, well, what are they doing up there? Why are they up there? Why are they
Mhm.
hiding up there? What are they hiding? You know what I mean?
Fear of the unknown.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the balance between, you know, the lone wolf style and the Cathar style, gotta be right in between so you can survive and thrive and not be, you know, a threat but not too weak.
Yep. And in terms of the police and the military being a danger to you as enforcers, build your community. Helps
Yeah.
to build your community because you're right. Even in a situation of tyranny, even if all the good soldiers and all the good firefighters and all the good police have left, and it's only the psychopathic enforcers remaining, that's only about 10% of the population, by the way. Um, Maybe not only 10%, but it is about 10% of the population that really suffer from those social issues. But even if all those people were in the military and in the police, you still outnumber them. And if you have a good community, you stand a better chance of withstanding enforcement.
Yeah. And I mean, even in most situations, so I live in like a small town. The police here like live in the town. So the chances that they would be used as enforcement or anything like that really, I'd say it's pretty low, but you never know. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, anyways, this was a good broadcast.
I agree. It's Always nice to talk to my best bud about the same things we've been talking about since we were kids.
Yeah, yeah. We have good things to
Yeah.
say, and we'll continue this another time, and we'll continue looking for solutions and press forward.
Yes. Press forward is the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, this has been the Radio Underground with Entellus and